and I don't know if I'd say I'm comfortable with him being the red zone guy because I could totally see them throwing in Rashawn Johnson or Khalil Herbert just to
No,
have
I
an extra
agree.
body out there. So like,
That's the other reason why I think RB2 for
yeah,
sure.
I think RB2 for sure. And then like if you really were stressing about his injury history, go ahead and pick up Herbert or Johnson because if he gets hurt, those guys, both of them, are going to get an up in carries. Like, and when that happens, I think it'll be about a 50-50 if it does happen, I should say. But yeah, the only thing to me that I personally don't like is his touchdown production. That's been throughout most of the years. But time will only tell. I think he's an RB2 at best. I wouldn't even put him in that RB1 realm just yet until we kind of saw how the season played out.
I think his TD production will determine that.
Yeah, for sure. But now on to number 20, Zamir White, your guy.
Man, I this guy is a beast. I am a huge Zamir White fan. I think the Raiders have something here. I also think that's the reason why they let Jacobs go. I really do. I think that um, this is going to be his third year. I think that he showed the Raiders enough when Jacobs was out last year uh, that they said, "Listen, we can get by without Jacobs. We can have Zamir be our guy, and we can bring in somebody." Which is why they went out and got Alex Madison. Because like I said before with Madison, Madison to me is nothing more than a change of pace guy. He's not an RB1. I definitely think Zamir White is an RB1. Is going to be an RB1 this year. He's one of my hot takes. I think that he. This is my prediction. I think that Zamir White definitely has the ability to be a top 15 guy, if not a top 10 guy, based on how the Raiders use him. I'm high on him. I like him. Uh, he rushed for over 4 yards a carry last year. Yeah, he played 17 games and a lot. He was split. With Jacobs. Jacobs got most of the carries when Jacobs was playing, but the games that Jacobs didn't play, White played out. He showed that he deserves to be in the league. He didn't. He only had one touchdown last year, but again, a lot of that had to do with Jacobs. I expect that he's going to have a huge breakout year. I really do. He's one of my guys that I think is going to have a breakout year. I'm very high on him, and I definitely think that he is an RB2. I think that he has the potential to be an RB1 based on what we see at the beginning of the year. Definitely a guy that you know people should be looking at and not overlooking when they're drafting in fantasy.
Yeah, for me, I'm kind of like not fully sold, just due to the fact that I think that White is gonna get more carries and be on the field a little bit more than Madison, but I still think Madison's gonna get his fair share of carries. I think this is gonna be a split backfield, leaning more towards White, probably like a 60-40 split. Having him here at 20 to me is like, all right, like I could see it. I don't know if I'd put him anywhere higher than 20 just at this moment since we haven't seen him like in a full time starting role. I know that didn't go well for Madison last year, but I still think Madison will be heavily involved in the passing game for sure. I still think he'll get his fair share of carries.
Yeah, I disagree. I think Madison's going to be nothing more than a third down back and a change of pace guy when White needs a break. I think that's the only reason why the Raiders brought Madison in. Madison's never shown that he can be the guy in the rushing game. So I think Madison was brought in to help in the passing game. That's just my opinion, though. So
Yeah, and I don't know if I agree with that because Zamir White hasn't done enough for me to be like, wow, like he. But again, he's been behind Jacobs, like you said, and yeah, he did carry for over 4 yards a carry, but um, I don't know. I'm just not fully sold on him as the starter just yet, but time will tell. We'll see when things go along.
what's last year? Go to last year. So last year, the games where White was in there when Jacobs was out, he he was averaging almost 20. He was averaging 20 carries a game for the 4 games that he was in there. And yeah, one of the games he only averaged 3.5 yards a carry, but I still think he's gonna be the
The
guy.
other thing I want to note, though, the reason he got the ball so much is because Amir Abdullah was the backup in that moment,
I don't think
and
that had anything.
Abdullah
I don't
like
think that had anything to do with it.
didn't do anything. So I don't necessarily agree with you saying he's going to be top 15. I think 20 at best is where we kind of have him. But
Well, at the end of the year when we recap, I will gladly accept your
and I'll gladly take yours as well because you're on the
apology.
Pine Park right now. Rhamondre Stevenson. I think we might have him a little
uh, Listen, I like Stevenson, but I'd take Zamir White over Stevenson this year. Um, uh, so um, I think New England's got a much more solid RB2 than uh, the Raiders do. For example, I think Antonio Gibson is, when he stays healthy, he's a solid RB2, and I can definitely see him, being involved in the offense. But I do think that I believe the Patriots signed him to a contract extension. So I just they signed him to a 4-year extension. They're obviously going to use Stevenson this year. I think Stevenson is a borderline RB1. Um, you know, uh, and when I say borderline, I mean I think there's better options at RB1, but I can see him being an RB1. They got Drake May, they got Brissett as their quarterbacks. I still feel like Drake May is going to be the guy because of where they drafted him. So, like I've said before, with a rookie quarterback, the running back's going to be huge. And if Stevenson can stay healthy, again, that's the one thing. His rookie year he only played 12 games. 2022 he played 17, so he played all year. And 2023 he only played 12 games. If he can stay healthy and play all 17 games, I definitely think that he'll definitely, I think, surpass the 1,000 yard
low. Oh
mark
yeah, 100%.
for sure. Um, I think the fact that they brought in Gibson is a good thing for Stevenson because Gibson is a nice change of pace guy. Definitely different running styles between Stevenson and Gibson. And Stevenson was actually pretty active in their passing game in the last 2 years. I mean, in 2022 he actually had almost 70 receptions. So he's a good pass catcher. Same with Gibson. So I like Stevenson. I think he's going to have a great year if he stays healthy. I think bringing in Gibson isn't going to hurt him one single bit, especially given that they signed him to a contract extension. So I think the only thing that's going to limit Stevenson is him being able to stay on the field. If he stays on the field, I think he's definitely going to break 1,000 yards. It wouldn't surprise me if he has 50 catches. I wouldn't say he's going to have 70 because
Oh, definitely not.
I think Antonio Gibson is definitely going to be utilized probably a lot on third downs and in passing situations. So but it wouldn't surprise me if he got around 50 receptions. I definitely think Stevenson would be their guy in the red zone.
Oh,
When you
100%.
look at who they got, I don't think anybody's going to really steal red zone opportunities. I don't even think Gibson would steal red zone opportunities. So I think his TD production is definitely going to go up. He could have around 10 TDs.
Possibly.
I don't think it would be
If that offense is
impossible
clicking.
for him to get 10 TDs, and it wouldn't surprise me if he does have 50 receptions, if he does have a couple, 2, 3 receiving touchdowns. So yeah, I definitely like Stevenson. Think he's an RB1 for sure.
For me, he's like probably upper RB2. His health probably being like a main factor in that because 2 of the 3 seasons he has been hurt for a minimum of 4 games, if not 5. For me, Could see him as an RB1 as well, especially if he does what he did back in 2022. If you remember that team, they also had Damian Harris on that roster as well. And having Gibson on this roster kind of reminds me of what that duo used to be like. I could totally see Stevenson and Gibson feeding off each other really well because back in 2022, you saw Harris and Stevenson both, getting in the mix and rushing and passing. So it was never something where it was just heavily one sided, like, with Derrick Henry running the ball a lot and then another running back receiving it. So
Right.
it'll be a nice little change of pace to have Gibson in there, and you're never going to really know what to expect out of either running back. So I think that's a positive for Stevenson because you never know what you're going to get. Like, he could have a play called for him in the passing game, could be the running game, it could really just be anything. Like,
well, and you don't give somebody a 4-year extension if you don't have big plans for him in the offense.
So I think he's high end RB2, maybe low end RB1. But that all just kind of depends on his touchdown production. If he has, 6, 7, 8 plus touchdowns, like, he'll definitely be like a mid to low end RB1 by the end of the year. Move on from Stevenson. We got Aaron Jones, the big debate so far.
Oh my God. I mean, let me just tell you guys something here. I don't know where Wiggs gets his stuff, but man, there's some nights where this guy must be smoking some really good stuff. If and
Stats speak for itself.
And listen, I don't disagree that Jones is a talented running back, but he's sneaking up on that 30 years old age. He's had issues staying healthy throughout his career. The health is going to be his big thing. The Vikings have Ty Chandler right behind him. I totally see this being a Jones, A.J. Dillon type of situation, especially given the fact that the Vikings are going to want to keep Jones healthy so that they have him. So I'm not sold. Wiggs has him ranked at number 8. I do not. I'll be honest with you. 18 to me is really high. I would take Rhamondre Stevenson. I would take Zamir White. I would take Swift. I would take Montgomery. There's a lot of other guys that I would take over Jones. Now, it could be a hot take for Wiggs, and that's great because it was probably a hot take that he was smoking when he ranked him. But I just don't see Jones. If Jones stays healthy, could he revert back and have a 2022 year where he averaged 5 yards a carry and 1,100 yards? Sure, absolutely. He was active in the passing game. Had 60 receptions. Sure, I could definitely see that. Here's the thing, though. Until I can see that he's not going to get hurt and stay out on the field, and the fact that they've got a young running back that they're very high on and Ty Chandler behind him, and the fact that he's almost 30, I'm sorry, I just don't see Jones having that great of a year. I think Jones at best is an RB2. I would not give him an RB1 nod. That's just me. And I think he's a middle of the pack RB2 until he proves me wrong. And listen, if he proves me wrong, I'll be the first to admit I was wrong.
Oh, you can admit that right now because you're wrong.
Because I don't think that that's going to be the case. I think that there's going to be a lot of hype around him, and I truly think that Jones is going to have some injuries this year, and he's going to miss multiple games.
Now, here's where the straight facts come. Here's the facts. Jones, even when hurt, produces. You look at the numbers over there. Outside of his rookie year, he was top 25. He was hurt for 4 games, maybe 5, depending on. Well, no, that would be 4. I think that was 16 games a year at that time. You look at 2019, played a full season. Second running back in points. You look at the next year, 5th, missed 2 games. Look the next year after that, missed 2021, that's probably 2 games at that point. Finished top 10. You look at the year after in 2022, played a full season, top 10 again. Look at last year, he plays 11 games, he's still sitting at RB 37. If he's healthy, he's easily a top 10 running back last year, and I won't be told otherwise. And if you look
Good
at
for you.
you look at
If
this,
he's healthy.
yeah, and you look at the start of the year when he got a little bit dinged up. What was he ranked there? RB1 that week one. The only reason I know that is because Eckler was ranked number 2.
Yeah, and he had 41 yards that game.
And 86 receiving. He also had 2 touchdowns.
I'm just saying.
Hey, PPR league receiving touchdowns.
I'm
your points.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just not sold on him.
And
a lot of it might be the fact that he used to be a Packer. I mean, seriously.
Well, now he's on your Vikings, so now you have to root for him. So you're
I'm
kind of
just
forced
saying.
to.
I'm higher on Ty Chandler. I think at some point during this year that Ty Chandler is going to be more productive.
I disagree with that. I think Jones will be healthy all year.
Jones is getting up there in age, and
yeah, so is CMC, so is Derrick Henry.
Nah, they're not as old as Jones, dude.
CMC is like 28, Henry's like 30.
Well, Henry's okay, different.
Well, Henry is different. I'm just saying, like Jones can be just as productive, but I think
debate for a different
day. Aaron Jones is gonna be healthy all year. He's gonna be a top 10 running back, and putting him at 30 is a faded take. He is minimum top 20, but think what you like. If you wouldn't put him above James Conner or Tony Pollard.
Go ahead and draft him if you can.
Oh, that won't happen in our league. He's going to be kept by a guy in our league. So, but I would probably draft him any day of the week as a high end RB2 or low end RB1.
All right, so now we're on to Alvin Kamara. You know, initially I would have said my ranking was spot on. I still think maybe I was a little low on him, just given the news about Kendra Miller. My ranking was based on what Miller was supposed to be doing, but I know Miller is dealing with an injury, and we talked about him earlier in the other grouping that we did. So I still think Kamara's, where he should be in our rankings. I definitely think he's an RB1. I don't think Jamal Williams is going to surpass him. I think if Kamara stays healthy this year, again, he only played 13 games last year. Kamara's, I, he's not going to rush for 1,000 yards.
He's a receiving back.
He splits it. He's a CMC, type running back. His points for fantasy come because, and PPR come because he had 75 receptions last year. I don't think that that's gonna change, and he probably would have had over 100 had he been healthy. So
not suspended.
Not suspended. That's right. He was suspended for
first 4 games.
First 4 games. Okay, so I take it back. He was healthy last year. I forgot about the suspension. So had he not been suspended last year, he probably would have had over 100 receptions. He's definitely an RB1.
He would have been top 5.
So he's definitely an RB1. He's not gonna overwhelm with rushing yards. So I don't think he's gonna. He's probably gonna have right around the same, around 700 yards maybe. But he's also gonna probably have around 5, 6, 700 yards receiving, depending. Last year if he wasn't out the first 4 games, he probably would have had, probably close to 600 yards, over 600 yards receiving. So given the fact of how often they use him in the receiving, and let's be honest, there's a lot of question marks in the receiving core of New Orleans, and that's because they know they got Kamara, so he's just a big part of their receiving game. So I definitely think he's an RB1 given the fact that he's a huge asset in the receiving game, and he's gonna rack up a lot of points just from receptions alone.
Yeah, and I think I might have ranked him just a little low on my list. I probably would have. I don't know. I feel like he'd be like a top 12 type of running back, especially now with the injury to Miller. But just in general, like looking at how he's performed each and every year, even when he's splitting reps those first 2 years with Mark Ingram back when he was like a rookie in his second year, he was a top four running back each year just strictly because of his receiving alone. He's had 5 seasons where and I'm going to count last year with the suspension where he's had 80 plus because he would have had well over 80 receptions last year if he was not suspended. Of
Oh,
just
he would have had close to
oh
100.
yeah, he probably would have had like
He had 75
yeah
last year
probably
without
would have had
playing 4 games.
so he definitely would have been around that 100 mark. He probably would have been a top five, if not top three, running back. I think I probably would have ranked him probably anywhere from 10 to 12 because I still do think there are like 10 other running backs better than him going into this year, and he's getting a little bit old, same age as Jones, but um, I don't know because he did have one off season there the year prior, but I think he got hurt for a little bit of that year, so
Yeah, I don't know. I think
it's a
maybe I
toss up,
definitely
really.
see him in the top 15 with the potential to be a top 12, top 10 guy, depending on his touchdown production. So
I think either way, even if he was having an off year, he's at the minimum an RB2, but he should be RB1 realm any day of the week.
yeah, given his point, I definitely think he's an RB1 for
Yeah.
sure.
But if he had an off year for some reason, like he's still gonna be borderline RB1, RB2. So Kenneth Walker. Now this one I want to hear your thoughts on 13.
So Walker. Last year he was hurt a couple games. He just missed, getting 1,000 yards. Uh, I don't see a ton of competition behind him, to be quite honest. So I think he's gonna, I think Zach Cabernet is gonna be a change of pace guy at best. I think Walker is gonna be the guy. He obviously, did have some receptions. He had around 30 receptions last year, so he is active in their passing game as well. Uh, so I think Walker's big thing is I think that uh, you really need him to score a touchdown in order for him to, um, you know, I, you know. I think he definitely needs to have a touchdown. Last year he had 8 rushing touchdowns and 1 receiving touchdown. So I think and you can say that with any running back, right? But he averaged just a little bit over 4 yards a carry. Uh, I think he's borderline. Well, I'm not going to say borderline. I think he's probably an RB1. Um, where I'm hesitating a little bit is that they got a brand new coaching staff. Pete Carroll liked to run the ball. Um, So I don't know what this new coaching staff is going to do with him. So, but I also don't think that there's anybody that I think it's there's not anybody on the depth chart that I feel is going to overtake him or really have a major effect on his carries. So I'm you know I definitely think he's probably an RB1 given what he did last year, low end RB1 for sure. And he could move up a little bit higher based on what we see the new coaching staff do with him in their offense.
Yeah, for me, I kind of have him just a little bit lower there at like mid to high range RB2. Um, I'm just not like fully sold because of his lack of like production within the receiving game, and it's not like it's terrible, but like in a PPR league, I would like to have a running back with a little more targets and a little more receptions. Like even if it was just like 10 more behind him to get him up to like 40 a year, that'd be more ideal. But
And it's hard to know until he
yeah,
plays 17
yeah.
games, right?